Hello, this is Shalwa and we are going to make exercises in MySQL. This is a part 3 and in this video we will discuss on about the subquery. Subquery is a very powerful concept which allow us to build this kind of selection blocks which is difficult or impossible to write by join concept. Subquery has its advantage, allow us to understand and read the blocks very easily. Let me introduce the subquery example and structure. How is it work? The subquery structure include outer query and inner query. Inner query is related always in outer query, and first, if you want to understand this block, should execute the inner query, and inner query how it's related to outer query, which is the last output of our object. Okay, let me definition of subquery. Subquery is a nested query where the result of one query can be used in another query via a relational operator or aggregator function. The nested concept is very important to understand as a data scientist, and when you are using a relational operator, it looks like a select via or having a from, which is a relational operator, or aggregator function, which means average, count, sum. Subquery has its properties, and let's discuss on about this. A subquery must be enclosed with parentheses. Yes, subquery is the main concept is it's writing in parentheses and which is related to the main table, main selection. Subquery can have only one column in the selection clause if used in via clause. One block, which is the subquery, where it's related by via clause, has one column solution. Also, order by clause is not allowed in subquery. It's useless when you're using order by in inner query. Subquery can be nested with other subqueries. Yes, this is possible to represent multiple subqueries, and we will go through this way of subqueries. And subqueries are used in via clause, having clause, from clause, and select clause. Let me introduce the simple example. How is it work and see it practically. While we start the simple example, let's write two simple tables which we manipulate in the next stage. While we start subqueries, let's remind how was creating the table. We set the table 1 and table 2. ID is an integer. We claimed it's not null. Also, we created another column, the string, with the varchar as a string, and also it's not null. And primary key is a ID, and unique is a string. Yes, this is very simple to create. And also, we inserted the data in these tables and represent it by selection claims. Looks like this and looks like this. Okay, let's write the simple selection by subquery. Okay, let's explain this block. We selected from table 1, let me show. From table 1, this kind of data which is not included in table 1 IDs, and table 1 ID is ID does not contain 4 and 5 rows. Yes, this. And finally it's matched by this ID selection, the output selection clause. Yes, this working like this. Same result is possible to receive return by join clause. This was a substitute, but when you have a bit complicated business solutions, in a join getting a bit ambiguity or sometimes cumbersome. Okay, let's continue and make another business solutions. We have another database, this kind of database, and let's make some selections by subquery, and let's make exercises. Okay. We have the first task like this. The employees who work in the office located in USA. We make this kind of selection. Here's a classic models database. Here's the employees table, office code, last name and first name. Office table, office code, which is the primary key, and a country. Okay, let's go back in our task and make a first selection for business solution. We represented by this query. Here's the office code, offices from offices table, and country which is equal to USA string. Okay, let's start another task. We pass this using MySQL Subquery in the where clause, the customer who has the highest payment. Okay, we have the payments table with the represented the amount column, payment date, check number, and the customer number. We should the represented subquery, which is the include the aggregation function. Okay, let's start. Yes, we represented and calculated this, and let's check in. That was yes. This is a bit different subquery because inner query is represented the aggregated function. We passed this task. We have also another find the customers whose payments are greater than the average payment using a subquery. Yes, this is the same kind of subquery which was the previous. On this case, I'm going to use some tricks. For example, aggregated function has its advantage. We can't just change the key code, key function. I don't need the max, need just the average. And it's solved very easily. And let's make use this kind of query we needed in or not in. Okay. For this case, we want to select these customers who has no placed any orders. We need not in. In previous codes, we wrote in clauses our subquery. Now let's try in not in clauses subquery. Okay, let's write. Let's look these two tables. In this table we have the customer's number, this column, and the customer name. For this table, orders with the primary number is a order number and related to customer number. We interested this customer number which does not contain here. So we add the distinct which get rid of the duplicate rows and represented this kind of customer names. Okay, we represented this task. Find the maximum, minimum, and average number of items in sales order. It looks like the aggregative function subqueries. Okay, let's check in. In this section, our task is to count in order details how many order numbers are. For example, here's this order number is the 4 and etc. Okay, let's write the code and explain. Yes, we represented this kind of subquery where subquery is represented in from clause. First of all, let me execute this subquery. Here's the represented the items, which is the counted. Here's a 4. Also, this order number is also 4, and etc. It's the characteristic when from has subquery, it needs its alias. This is the alias. By SQL library, this subquery called the derived selection, derived query. We calculated these items and after took the maximum, minimum and average. By the way, average has its floor function. Floor function means the rounding of the number seen in practice this way. Yes, it's 9.19 for example, and the floor means just the took first decimal, whatever. Subquery, which is the in floor, very important to understand, and it has its rules how to write. Okay, anyway, we passed this task. Next is correlated subquery. Is a bit wide scope and we will represent. So let's understand the tasks. What does select products whose buy prices are greater than average buy price. For example, on a products table, here's a product name, huge list. Here's the buy prices. We want this average of each one's of all products in product line. So let's plan. We want the product name, we want their average price, which has each product line. Here's in product lines is one conditional and another average and another this selection. Okay, let's write. By the way, I will start of writing code. I want to notice in the previous example, you notice that subquery, this subquery, which is the derived and has its alias, this alias, subquery is independent. We executed this and received some number. It means that you can execute it subquery and as a standalone query. And correlated subquery, it's a bit different and very structural. Okay, let's write. So, unlike a standalone subquery, or correlated subquery is a subquery that uses the data from the outer query. In this section, we use the products, this P1, which is the correlated, and all selection is related just to one table, products table. In other words, a correlated subquery depends on the outer query. Correlated subquery is evaluated once for each row in the outer query. It means if we selected the subquery and make execute, Ctrl Shift Enter, we will make an error because contain the outer query and it's executed by whole by this one. Okay, we discuss on about the correlated subquery. It's very interesting and has its own characters, and we passed the simple subquery tasks and we are going to make the multiple subqueries. Okay, let's continue. For multiple subquery blocks needs to understand database. Okay, let's go in our SQL and set next problem. Find customers who like to watch action movies in Sakila database. Okay, this is the Sakila database, and for this business task we should analyze the database schemas. Okay, let's go, and we want the category, which is the action, and here's the category. Category, it's related by primary key to film category. Film category related At the next, the film type. Film type related to inventory by inventory ID. Yes, this is the inventory ID. No, it's the film ID. After the inventory, it's related to rental table, and after rental table related to customers. So we want these customer IDs, customer names, which watch the film category where it is the action. Let's go and write multiple subquery block code. Okay. Finally, we represented this multiple subquery and selected customers who watching action movies. If you want to test multiple subquery, maybe you have seen in this scroll video, we should test step by step from the subquery blocks. This way, for example, and this way also. So, okay, let's write another problem statement. Same result is possible to get by join function, and let's write and represent. Here's the join function. It's the substitute of a multiple subquery, and let's understand and analyze this block code. Here's the represented customer. It's the alias, the cost, matched with the rental match the inventory by its primary key, after the film with film ID, and at last via clause conditioned this block to action just a filter. If I makes Ctrl Shift Enter, execute, same result I will receive as my previous code. So in the internet there's a lot of resources where they can make exercises. This kind of subqueries, this looks like the nested function, which is very necessary for upgrade your view and solve many business problems. Thank you so much for watching. We will continue our series. If you need any resources, don't hesitate to contact me. You can see in below my LinkedIn account. Thanks for watching.